My name is Eliza, and I am 34 years old. I received the embossed, cream-colored invitation to my father's retirement party on a Tuesday. It arrived in a box, not an envelope. Tucked beneath the ridiculously thick cardstock was a leather-bound folder. Inside was a shockingly blatant family legacy agreement, which, in Denza, impenetrable legalese, demanded I sign over all voting rights and asset control of my artistic LLC to him. The stated reason, in a cheerful cover letter from my brother, Julian, was tax consolidation purposes. This was the shocking move. I was, on paper, completely helpless. To my family, I was the bohemian failure, the artist daughter who lived in a tiny, rented loft and couldn't possibly understand finance. My entire identity, in their eyes, was defined by my perceived incompetence, especially when compared to my father, Arthur Vance, a titan of finance, and Julian, a cutthroat investment banker. Their motive was brutally clear. My father was facing a catastrophic financial ruin I wasn't supposed to know about, and he believed my worthless little company was his last, disparate a lifeline. But as I looked at the signature line on the agreement, I felt a cold, sharp smile. I already knew he had been forging my signature on multi-million-dollar loans for months. And this party, his party, was the perfect public stage to present him with the bill. To my family, I am a disappointment, a permanent, walking, creative wild card in a deck, otherwise stacked with royal flushes. My father, Arthur Vance, is a 60-year-old caricature of corporate success. He's the CEO of a prominent Seattle financial firm, a man who wears $5,000 Brioni suits and speaks in booming, confident tones that leave no room for dissent. His entire personality is built on the assumption that he is the smartest man in any room. My mother, Margaret, is his perfect accessory. A woman whose entire career has been managing social appearances, charity boards, and the pristine, cold, museum-like interior of their mansion in Medina. And then there is my older brother, Julian, the golden son, the heir. Julian followed the sacred path, Wharton, Goldman Sachs, and now a high-powered VP role at a competing bank where he moves markets. As he loves to tell us over Christmas dinner, he is 38, twice divorced, always the wife's fault, of course, and has a smile as sharp and empty as a shard of glass. And then, there's me, Eliza, the one who went to art school, the one who, instead of seeking a corporate ladder, became a freelance artist. I live in a modest to them, squalid loft in Capitol Hill. I drive a 10-year-old car, and I wear jeans and paint-stained sweaters to family dinners. My achievements winning national design awards, my art being featured in galleries in New York and Berlin were treated as cute hobbies. That's lovely, dear, my mother would say, patting my hand with a pitying look. But you can't buy anything with lovely. Why can't you be more like Julian? At least he's contributing to society. My father was more direct. His disappointment was a tangible presence. A cold draft in every room I entered. This art phase is getting old. Eliza, he'd said at my 30th birthday dinner, in front of all his friends. When are you going to get a real job? You're not a child anymore. It's embarrassing. This facade, this role of the struggling artist, was the most brilliant weapon I ever built. They were so blinded by their own arrogance, by their narrow, suffocating definition of success, that they never thought to look closer. They never questioned how I was surviving, and apparently thriving, in one of the most expensive cities in the world. They just assumed I was barely scraping by, a perpetual charity case, and the cognitive dissonance of my actual life versus their perception of it was something their brains simply refused to process. The truth is, I am not just an artist, I am E.V., the anonymous founder and CEO of Nexus Core Technologies. The little art project I started in my loft 6 years ago wasn't about paintings, it was about data encryption. Specifically, a revolutionary new SaaS platform that provides unbreachable, decentralized data security for the financial and healthcare industries. While my family was mocking my hobby, I was quietly building a company that was, according to the Wall Street Journal, the most disruptive tech startup of the decade. We were, and are, valued at over $100 million, and heading toward a massive IPO. I lived modestly, not out of necessity, but out of strategy. I kept my name off every public document, using my initials E, V, and letting my COO, a trusted mentor, be the public face. My father, the financial titan. He had no idea that the company, his own firm, was desperately trying to woo as a client. The white whale he'd been complaining he couldn't land was owned and operated by the daughter he dismissed as a failure. My family's casual disdain was something I had learned to live with. It was the wallpaper of my childhood. But their arrogant stupidity also made them sloppy. For years, they had treated me like a secret. Shameful ATM. It was a bizarre paradox in their minds. I was both a broke failure and a source of ready cash. Eliza. Darling. My mother would call, her voice a trill of manufactured concern. We're having a small issue with the country club dues. A mix-up. Could you just help just a little loan? That was $10. Ling ling ling. Hey, sis. Julian would text, not even bothering with a greeting. My condo fees are insane. Spot me $5. Ling ling ling. I'll get you back. He never did. My father was the worst. His requests were always framed as lessons. Eliza. I'm in a bit of a bind on a short-term investment. I need $20. Ling ling ling. Just for 90 days. It's a family matter. Think of it as an education in how real assets work. I paid every single time, transferring the money from my actual business account. It was the price of admission. The cost of maintaining my cover. I told myself it was just money, but I was funding their lifestyle. The very lifestyle they used to look down on me. I was subsidizing the arrogance that was used as a weapon against me. I was paying them to insult me. Then, 6 months ago, the real betrayal began. It wasn't a request. It was theft. I was at my real office, the Nexus Core headquarters, in a secure building my family didn't know existed. We were in a late-night meeting with the pre-IPO audit team. My personal CFO, a brilliant, no-nonsense woman named Helen Vance, who also happened to be my forensic auditor, called me into her office. Her face was pale. Eliza, she said, her voice tense. I flagged an anomaly. A massive one. A hard credit inquiry was made against your personal assets 3 weeks ago. Specifically against your Nexus Core private shares. A bank in the Cayman Islands just issued a secured loan for $10 million. I felt the blood drain from my face. What? That's impossible. I haven't applied for any loans. I know, she said. The loan wasn't issued to you. It was issued to Vance Holdings LLC, a shell corporation, but your shares were used as collateral. The signature on the pledge agreement, it looks like yours. But it's not. Eliza, someone forged your signature. I knew instantly. Vance Holdings was my father's private equity firm. I hung up the phone with the audit team and I didn't cry. I didn't scream. I felt that cold, sharp clarity my aunt used to talk about. Find it all. Helen, I said, I want to know everything. The investigation took 2 months, and it was worse than I could have imagined. My father wasn't just in a bind. He was ruined, utterly. A decade of high-risk gambling, leveraged against his clients' funds, and shadow investments had imploded. He was, to put it simply, bankrupt, and on the verge of being charged with massive embezzlement. He was a walking felony. The $10 million loan he'd forged my name on was just the first. Helen found 2 more, from 2 different offshore banks, totaling $30 million, all secured against my Nexus Core stock, all with my forged signature. And my brother, Julian, the golden banker, had helped him. Helen uncovered a string of encrypted emails between them. Julian had used his position at his bank to push the fraudulent loans through, falsifying my financial data, assuring the lenders that his artist sister was a silent partner who had no idea what she was doing and had given him verbal power of attorney. They were arrogant. They were stupid. They had documented their own crimes in a flurry of self-incriminating emails. She's too dumb to ever notice. Julian had written in one, "She'll be thanking us when we save her hobby with the profits." My first instinct was to call the police, to have them arrested. Milaver. Mr. Chen, a man as precise and sharp as a scalpel, advised against it. "If you do that," he explained, sitting in my office, "the banks will freeze the shares. They'll declare the loans in default. It will trigger a legal battle that will tie up your company and your IPO for years. They will drag you down with them. Your father, he believes he's just one big win away from paying it all back. He is a desperate man. He's a cornered animal." "So what do?" I asked, the rage in my chest so cold it burned. "Let him steal my company." "No," Chen said, a thin, cold smile on his face. "We use their own arrogance against them. We use the loophole." The loophole was brilliant. Because Nexus Corp was still a private LLC, I had the right to restructure. Following Chen's precise instructions, I executed a quiet, complex corporate maneuver. I created a new, identically named holding company, Nexus Corp Delaware LLC. Then, in a series of airtight legal filings, I transferred 100% of Nexus Corp's actual assets, the patents, the code, the client contracts, the cash reserves, everything of value into this new, unassailable entity. The original company, the one my father had forged his name on, the one whose shares he had pledged to the banks. It was now nothing. A hollowed-out legal shell. It owned nothing. No patents. No code. No cash. It was a flawed inheritance. Arthur Vance had committed federal bank fraud, risking decades in prison, to steal absolutely nothing. Now, holding this embossed invitation, I understood. The banks were closing in. The loans were coming due. My father's retirement was a sham. He was being forced out by his board. He needed one last document. He needed my real signature on this family legacy agreement to try and merge the hollow shell with the real company. To cover his tracks. To make the theft complete before the audit. He thought I was stupid. He thought I was the artist who would just sign the paper to help the family. "Eliza, are you coming?" Julian texted me as I stared at the agreement. "Dad's party is a big deal. All his partners and bankers will be there. For God's sake, try to look presentable." I typed back, me fingers steady. I wouldn't miss it for the world. I called Mr. Chen. "They're making their move. The party is in 2 weeks." "Good," he said. "Helen Vance, the forensic auditor, will be ready. I'll be there as well. As your legal counsel, it's time to set the trap." The night of the party, I arrived at the Rainier Crest Country Club, a place I hadn't set foot in since I was 16 and forced to attend debutante lessons in a dress I hated. The ballroom was exactly as I remembered, a sea of glittering diamonds and dark tuxedos. Oppressive and suffocating, I could smell the expensive, cloying scent of old money, orchids, and something else. A faint, acidic tang of desperation. This wasn't a retirement party. It was a coronation of lies. My father had spared no expense, my forged, stolen expense to create this stage. All his partners were here. The ones he was actively embezzling from. The bankers he had defrauded. Men whose careers were now tied to his lies. Were here, sipping his champagne. It was a room full of victims and predators. And I was the only one in the room who knew which was which. I had dressed the part. My part. I wore a simple, elegant but unassuming black dress. My hair pulled back in a neat bun. No jewelry save for a pair of simple studs. I looked exactly like their perception of me, the artist, daughter. Presentable, but not powerful. The moment I walked in, my family descended on me, their smiles as bright and brittle as spun glass. Eliza, darling my mother. Margaret, hissed, air kissing the space an inch from my cheek. Her diamond necklace, one I now suspected was paid for with my money, glittered violently under the chandelier. Thank goodness. I was so worried about your outfit. You look fine. Just fine. Her eyes did a rapid, critical scan from my shoes to my hair. That dress is very simple, isn't it? Never mind. She straightened a strap on my shoulder, her fingers cold and quick. A gesture not of affection, but of correction. Now, remember, darling, this is your father's night. His legacy. Please. She lowered her voice to a conspiratorial whisper. Try not to talk about your little projects. It's not the crowd for it. Stick to safe topics. Art museum. Perhaps, or better yet, just smile and let your brother do the talking. I just nodded. A small, accommodating smile fixed on my face. Of course. Mother, I understand. Good girl, she said, patting my arm before she was instantly swallowed by a group of women with identical pearls. I felt a presence slide up next to me. Julian. He didn't greet me, just stood beside me, piling oysters onto his plate from the massive ice sculpture. He looked me up and down, a slow, contemptuous smirk playing on his lips. Well, sis, you made it. And look at you, all dressed up. Hello, Julian, I said. I see you're still driving that ancient Subaru, he continued, ignoring my greeting. Did it backfire when you parked it? Or did the valets just laugh and point? I honestly can't believe you drove that thing here. It's embarrassing. It's a reliable car. Julian, it gets me where I need to go. It's a jalopy. Eliza. It screams, community college art teacher. It's humiliating. He leaned in, his voice dropping to a conspiratorial whisper, his breath smelling of gin. Look, after tonight, after Dad gets this, family consolidation sorted, we'll talk. I'll get you a lease on a respectable car, a little BMW. Maybe a white one, something that doesn't make us look poor. It'll be my gift to you. For being, cooperative. I felt the familiar, cold anger settle in my chest. A solid weight. He was offering to buy me a car with my own stolen money. He was treating me like a child, promising me a toy, while he and my father were committing grand larceny. The sheer, blinding arrogance of it was breathtaking. He had no idea I was the one paying for the very oysters he was currently dripping sauce on. That's so thoughtful. Julian, I said, my voice soft. Thank you for thinking of me. His smirk widened. He thought I was grateful. He was an idiot. Yeah. Well, just try to stay out of the way tonight. And smile. You look so gloomy all the time. He clapped me on the shoulder, a gesture of dismissal, and walked off. I spent the next hour drifting through the crowd, a ghost in my own execution. I felt like an anthropologist studying a tribe of soon-to-be-extinct, self-important fools. I listened as my father's business partners clapped him on the back, congratulating him on his stellar career. One of them, a man named Henderson, was someone I knew my father had stolen from directly. I'd seen the illegal transfers in Helen's report. Arthur, you're a legend. Henderson was booming. Don't know what the firm will do without you. Oh, I'll still be around. Don't you worry, my father laughed, raising his glass. The best is yet to come. I watched the bankers, the ones from the offshore banks who had signed off on the fraudulent loans. They were huddled with Julian, who was no doubt spinning more lies, assuring them their money was safe. that the consolidation tonight would secure everything. They looked nervous. But Julian, the golden sun, was soothing them. I saw Mr. Shen Milaver and Helen Vance, my auditor, slip in through a side door. They had arrived separately. They blended in perfectly. Helen, with her sharp, custom-tailored suit and even sharper eyes, looked like just another high-powered corporate executive. Shen, elegant and composed, looked like what he was, a predator, but one who was on my side. They took a position at a table in the back, observing, waiting, two silent figures of doom. Finally, the music softened. A drum roll played. My father, Arthur Vance, stepped up to the podium, a spotlight hitting his silver hair. He looked every inch the titan, the statesman, the benevolent patriarch. He beamed at the crowd, his arms spread wide, basking in the adoration. Friends, partners, family, he began, his voice booming with a false sincerity that he had polished to perfection over decades. Thank you. Thank you for being here. Thank you for sharing this transition with me, this legacy. I watched him, my stomach churning. I felt the cold, a hard weight of my cell phone in my clutch. It was a digital bomb. It contained everything: the scanned copies of the forged loan documents, Helen's complete audit report, detailing the embezzlement, the incriminating emails between him and Julian, the final, beautiful, terrible piece of paper, the official filing from the state of Delaware, confirming that the original Nexus Corp LLC was now a legally empty shell. They say a man is nothing without his legacy. My father continued, his eyes scanning the crowd of adoring, ignorant face. He was an incredible performer. I had to give him that. And my legacy. It's not just about finance. It's about family. It's about trust. It's about building something that lasts. I had to clench my hands into fists to stop myself from laughing out loud. Trust. He had the audacity to say that word. In this room. To these people. For decades. I've built this firm, he said, gesturing to his partners, and I am so proud that my son, Julian, will be there to carry that torch. He smiled at Julian, who raised his glass. But today, we are announcing something new, a new venture, a consolidation of the Vance family legacy, a new fund that will merge our stable, traditional assets with the innovations, the creativity of the next generation. I saw the partners lean in, intrigued. The bankers looked pleased. This was it. This was the big win he had promised them. The one he was funding with my stolen money. The lie that was supposed to cover all the other lies. And to complete this new chapter, Arthur said, his smile widening, his eyes landing on me, I want to bring my daughter, my heart, up to the stage. Eliza, come up. Darling, come up. A wave of polite, confused applause followed as a second spotlight swung and found me. I felt hundreds of eyes on me. This strange, artistic anomaly. The girl in the simple black dress. I felt Julian's hand on my back. Not a guide, but a push. Propelling me forward. Guiding me to the slaughter. My mother was beaming from the front row, her eyes shining with actual tears. She, too. I thought this was real. She was a fool. A willing, complicit fool. Blinded by the lifestyle she was so desperate to protect. I stood next to my father, my hands clasped in front of me. The light was hot. I felt like a child, a prop in his magnificent, fraudulent play. Now, he said, and he patted my head. He actually, literally, patted me on the head, as if I were a golden retriever who had just performed a simple trick. My Eliza. She's not like us. Is she? He laughed. A warm, paternal laugh. And the crowd chuckled with him. She's an artist, a creative soul. She doesn't want to be bothered with balance sheets and quarterly reports. Am I right? Darling. Something like that. Dad, I whispered, playing my part. Exactly, he boomed. And we love her for it. But as a father, as the head of this family, it is my duty to protect her. To protect her little company. He turned back to the crowd, his voice full of a syrupy, false concern. She built a little LLC for her art, a passion project, and as part of our new family fund, to protect her from herself. Really, to protect her from the complexities of a world she isn't built for. She is going to symbolically sign her voting rights over to the family trust. A symbolic, wonderful gesture of family unity. He was painting me as an incompetent child. He was committing a reckless, public act of humiliation. He was making me the fool in his story. The idiot daughter who was grateful to be robbed. The simpleton who needed her big, strong daddy to manage her hobby. Julian stepped forward, holding the embossed Furser, leather-bound folder, the same family legacy agreement he had mailed me, and a single, obscenely expensive-looking pen. Right here. Sis, he whispered, his voice urgent, his smile tight and false for the crowd. He opened the folder to the last page, the signature line waiting. Just sign it. Let's not keep everyone waiting. Be a good girl. My mother was nodding from the front row, mouthing the words. Sign it. Dear. Sign it. We're all so proud. They had backed me into a corner, in front of everyone who mattered to them. They were using public pressure, family obligation, and my perceived failure as a weapon. They expected me to be embarrassed, to be cowed, to just sign the paper to make the awkwardness go away. That's what I had always done. I looked at the pen. I looked at the signature line, right next to the space where my signature had already been forged on $30 million of debt. I looked at my father, Arthur, his face a mask of loving concern, a mask that hid the frantic, desperate gambler beneath. I looked at Julian, my brother, the co-conspirator, the man who had called me too dumb to ever notice. I looked at my mother, the enabler, the woman who had traded her daughter's well-being for a country club membership. I felt a profound, ice-cold calm. My heart wasn't even racing. It was the calm of a predator that has just watched its prey walk calmly and stupidly into a steel jaw trap. This was the moment. They hadn't just humiliated me. They had handed me the microphone. They had built me the stage. Wow. Dad, I said, my voice quiet. The microphone picked it up, and my soft words echoed through the silent ballroom. This is quite a document. A family legacy agreement. It sounds so important. It is, Eliza. It's the most important thing, my father said, his smile tightening. He was sensing something was wrong. My tone wasn't grateful. It was curious. Just sign it. Darling, it's just a formality. A formality. I repeated. I picked up the pen. I held it over the paper. And then I turned, just slightly, to the crowd. Actually, Dad, I don't think I will. A total, profound, and heavy silence fell over the ballroom. The only sound was the faint, high-pitched hum of the amplifier, a sound that seemed to drill into my ears. My father's painted-on smile froze, the muscles around his mouth twitching violently. Julian's hand, still holding the open leather folder, tensed, his knuckles turning a bloodless white. My mother, in the front row, looked utterly, wildly confused, as if I had suddenly started speaking in tongues. She gave a frantic, tiny headshake, a stop this now command. What? What did you say? Arthur stammered, his jovial host persona cracking wide open, revealing the frantic, desperate beneath. He tried to laugh it off. A dry, ugly, barking sound that fooled no one. Eliza. Darling, don't joke. We have guests. This is a celebration. This is my night. He leaned in, his voice a furious, low hiss that the microphone almost caught. Just sign the paper. Be a good girl. Don't embarrass me. I'm not joking. Dad, I said. I didn't raise my voice. I didn't need to. I gently, deliberately, took the microphone from the podium stand. It felt heavy and solid in my hand. The audio technician in the back, a young man I'd seen my brother boss around earlier, must have sensed the seismic shift in power. He turned the gain up. My voice was now filling every corner of the room, clear and cold as ice. Thank you for that lovely introduction, I said, turning to look my father directly in the eyes, calling me an incompetent child who needs protection, patronizing me in front of all your associates. It really clarifies things. Now, Eliza, that's not. My mother started from the front row, rising slightly from her chair, her face a mask of pale, social panic. She's just emotional, Arthur. I held up a hand, a simple, calm gesture. I'm speaking. Mother, please sit down. She froze. I had never, not once in my 34 years, spoken to her like that. She was so shocked by the quiet, absolute command that she simply obeyed. She sank back into her chair as if her strings had been cut. Dad, you're right. This is a night for announcements, I continued, turning to the stunned, silent crowd. And before I sign anything, I tapped the fraudulent document with the tip of the expensive pen. The tap, 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 echoing through the speakers. I'd like to introduce a few guests of my own. They weren't on your list, but they are absolutely crucial to this family legacy you're so proud of. I pointed to the back of the room, to the table where my allies were sitting, untouched champagne flutes in front of them. Please, could you stand, Mr. David Chen, my lead counsel from K&L Gates, and Ms. No, Helen Vance, my chief financial officer, and, for the last 6 months, my lead forensic auditor. Chen and Helen stood. They were two sharp, serious, immaculately dressed figures in a sea of confused, suddenly nervous partygoers. They did not smile. They did not wave. They just watched the stage, their presence a tangible, heavy weight in the room. The shift in the room was electric. These people didn't know K&L Gates as a vague law firm. They knew it as one of the most powerful corporate litigation firms in the world. And they definitely knew what forensic auditor meant. It was a bomb. It was the sound of a guillotine blade being ratcheted into place. I saw my father's eyes lock onto them. I watched the blood drain from his face, leaving it a waxy, greenish white. He knew what K&L Gates was. He knew what a forensic auditor was. Julian stumbled back a step, physically recoiling as if he'd been struck. The idiot artist shouldn't know those words, let alone have those people on her payroll. The family joke suddenly had teeth, and they were just now realizing how sharp they were. You see, I said, my voice resonating with a calm I didn't know I possessed. My father was right about one thing. I'm not really a businesswoman. Not under the name Eliza Vance. Anyway, it's a name I've found to be a bit of a liability. A name that invites dismissal. A name that makes people, even my own family. I locked eyes with my father. I think I'm simple. I turned to the cluster of nervous bankers near the front. The ones Julian had been schmoozing all night. The men from the offshore banks. Most of you, gentlemen, know me by a different name. You know me as E.V., the anonymous founder and CEO of Nexus Core Technologies. A massive, collective gasp. It wasn't a murmur. It was a sound. A physical shockwave of comprehension. Henderson, the partner who had called my father a legend, dropped his champagne flute. It shattered on the hardwood floor, and the sound was like a gunshot in the silence. No one even looked down. What Julian choked out, his voice a high-pitched, pathetic squeak. That's impossible. You're E.V. You're lying. She's lying, Dad. Tell them she's lying. She's crazy. Am I? Julian, I pulled my own phone from my clutch. It was already set. I tapped the screen. The massive projector screens behind the podium, the ones that had been cycling photos of my father's achievements, flickered. And then, my face, in a professionally shot, black and white portrait, flashed onto the screens. It was the photo from the Wall Street Journal, anonymous CEO profile, the one that had run 6 weeks ago. The headline was visible below it. The V. Enigma. How Nexus Core's founder built a $100 meters encryption empire in total secrecy. The room erupted. The facade of the party was ripped away, revealing the raw, panicked business deal underneath. People were standing, pointing, yelling. Arthur, one of the bankers, a man from the Cayman Bank, yelled out, his face pale and sweating. What the hell is this? Is this true? Is she Nexus Core? The IPO where the assets were leveraged against. Is that her? My father was clutching the podium, his knuckles white. He looked like he was having a heart attack. He was gasping, his mouth opening and closing. But no sound was coming out. It's a misunderstanding. He finally wheezed. A family joke. Eliza. Stop this now. Security, get her off the stage. It's no joke, I said, my voice cutting through the noise like a diamond drill. The room went silent again, desperate to hear the next word. My father and brother have taken a very special interest in my little hobby for the past 6 months. So much interest, in fact, that my father, Arthur Vance, I pointed at him, with the full assistance and co-conspiracy of my brother, Julian Vance. I pointed at my brother, who now looked like he was about to vomit, decided to forge my signature on 3 separate, multi-million-dollar loan agreements. Another wave of shock. This one colder, darker. This was no longer a family drama. This was a crime. Let's be specific. Shall we? I said. I like details. My artist brain. You know, first, there was the $10 million loan from First Cayman Trust, dated May 10th. A lovely forgery. Dad, your handwriting is a bit shaky, but Julian's financial fabrication of my personal assets was very convincing. The banker from the Cayman Bank looked like he was going to faint. Then, I continued, there was the $15 million loan from Euro Swiss Holdings, dated June 4th. That one was Julian's masterpiece. The email chain where you called me too dumb to ever notice and a trust fund simpleton was particularly damning evidence. Julian, thank you for that. Julian made a small, strangled sound. And finally, the $5 million from. Oh, wait. From your own firm's partner fund. Mr. Henderson. I looked at Henderson, who was now staring at my father with pure, unadulterated hatred. He pledged my shares to his own partners to cover his embezzlement, totaling, I said, $30 million. Pledged against the stock of the company he just called a passion project. He used his position at his firm to embezzle from his partners to cover his gambling debts. And when that wasn't enough, he stole my identity to defraud his bankers. He thought I was stupid. I said, walking right up to my father. He flinched as I approached. A big, powerful man made small by his own greed. He thought I was an artist who didn't read her mail. He patted me on the head. He thought I wouldn't notice a $30 million theft, perpetrated by my own family. But here is the most beautiful part. Dad, here is the family legacy you've really built. I turned back to the crowd. When I discovered the first forged loan, 6 months ago, I didn't call the police. I called my lawyers. I gestured to Chen, who nodded grimly. And just as my father was busy planning this coronation, I was busy restructuring. Ms. Vance. I called out. Helen. My auditor. Would you be so kind as to explain to my father's creditors what Nexus Core LLC, the company he actually pledged as collateral, is currently worth? Use the small words. Please. For my father's benefit. Helen's voice, amplified by a second microphone, a staff member had rushed to her, was cold as ice and sharp as a stiletto. She didn't need notes. Certainly, as of 10:00 a.m. this morning. Following the fully executed and legally ironclad asset transfer of all intellectual property, all patents, all client contracts, and all cash on hand to the new entity, Nexus Core Delaware LLC, the original entity, Nexus Core LLC, which Mr. Arthur Vance illegally pledged as collateral to these financial institutions, has a total audited asset value of $0.97. A single, hysterical laugh came from someone in the back. Zero. I leaned into my own microphone. My father and brother, I announced to the room, committed multiple federal felonies. They risked decades in prison. And they did it. To steal nothing. They forged my name, defrauded international banks, and embezzled from their own partners to secure $30 million in debt against a hollow, legally worthless shell company. I looked at Arthur. His mouth was open, a small, wet sound of despair escaping his lips. You didn't just fail as a businessman. Dad, you failed as a criminal. You were too arrogant and too stupid to even steal correctly. You were so busy looking down on the artist that you never, not once, did your due diligence on me. Your big win is a worthless piece of paper tied to $30 million in debt that you and your bankers now have to figure out. I held up the family legacy agreement he had tried to make me sign, the document that was his last entem. Desperate. Pathetic attempt to merge the nothing he stole with the something I built, to cover his tracks. This, I said, is your legacy. I tore it in half, then quarters. I let the pieces of the embossed, expensive paper flutter to the stage like dead leaves. The party, I said, setting the microphone back in its stand, is over. For a long, terrible moment. The only sound in the ballroom was the sound of the torn paper pieces fluttering to the polished stage floor. Then, shouts. It wasn't a murmur, it was a roar. The bankers, the ones from the Cayman and Swiss banks, were the first to move. They weren't just guests. They were men who had just seen their careers evaporate. Fraud! One of them screamed. A high-pitched, terrified sound. He committed fraud, Arthur. You're ruined. Henderson, the partner my father had embezzled from, lunged toward the stage. He was a big man, his face a mask of purple. Apoplectic rage. You stole from us. You bastard. You stole from me. Security, call the police. Don't let him leave this room. This was the betrayal. This was the total isolation. These men, who had clapped my father on the back an hour ago, were now a mob. They saw him not as a friend, but as the man who had just destroyed their finances, their reputations. They were fighting to see who could condemn him first, to distance themselves from his radioactive fallout. Julian, my golden brother, the one who was too smart for me, reacted exactly as the coward he was. He didn't defend his father. He didn't speak. He ran. He turned and sprinted from the stage, shoving a waiter out of his way, trying to get to the side exit. But he never made it. Mr. Julian Vance. David Chen's voice was calm, but it cut through the room. My lawyer was standing by the exit, blocking his path. I wouldn't do that. I have a process server here with a complaint for your part in the conspiracy to defraud. Running just makes you look even more guilty. Please, stay for the finale. Julian froze, his hand on the door. Trapped. He looked from Chen's cold, impassive face back to the stage. his eyes wide with animal panic. My father, Arthur, finally broke. He didn't just speak, he howled. It was a sound of pure, unadulterated rage. The sound of a god king who had just been toppled from his throne. You, he screamed, his finger shaking as he pointed it at me. You did this. You, ungrateful little bitch. I gave you everything. I gave you your life. I clothed you, I fed you, this was mine. It was all mine. He lunged at me, his hands clawed, his face a grotesque mask of fury. He was going to physically attack me. I didn't even flinch. I just stood there, my arms at my sides. He was stopped by the club security, who grabbed his arms. But the final and most pathetic attack came from my mother. Margaret ran to the edge of the stage. Her face crumpled, not with sadness, but with pure, selfish rage. Eliza, how could you? She shrieked, her voice cracking. How could you do this to your father? How could you do this to your family? In front of all these people, you've humiliated us. You've ruined everything. After all we've done for you, we loved you. Loved me, I asked, my voice flat. I looked down at this woman, my mother, who was crying, not for the crime her husband had committed, but for the embarrassment of him being caught. You mean, after all you took from me, you stood by. You watched this. You watched him pat me on the head and call me an idiot. And you smiled. I looked at my father, now held by 2 security guards. A pathetic, sweating, gasping old man in an expensive suit. I looked at Julian, frozen by the door, being served legal papers by Chen's associate. I looked at my mother, sobbing at my feet. You didn't love me, I said, my voice resonating in the now silent room. You loved my money, but you were too arrogant to ever respect the person who made it. You thought I was stupid. You thought I was a hobby. You thought I was your fool. But the arrogance, that was your blindfold. That was your flaw. You were so busy looking down on me. You never saw me coming. I turned, my back to all of them, and walked off the stage. I passed the partners yelling into their phones. I passed the bankers huddling with Mr. Bayless. Chen, who was now calmly handing out his business card, offering to help them navigate the bankruptcy. I passed Helen Vance, who was handing a neat, bound copy of her forensic audit to a police officer who had just arrived. I didn't look back. I walked out of the ballroom, through the opulent, empty lobby, and out the front doors. The valet, his eyes wide, scrambled to get my 10-year-old Subaru. I handed him a $100 bill. The cold, clean Seattle air hit my face, and for the first time in my life, I felt truly, completely, free. The fallout was exactly what my lawyers had predicted. It was total. It was a financial apocalypse. Arthur and Julian were arrested that night. The headlines the next morning were brutal financial titan Arthur Vance arrested for fraud, embezzlement, the Nexus Score deception, how artist daughter Eliza Vance exposed a multi-million-dollar family conspiracy. The trials were short. The evidence, the forged documents, the bank records, Helen's perfect audit. The self-incriminating emails was overwhelming. My father was sentenced to 20 years in federal prison for bank fraud and embezzlement. Julian, for his part as co-conspirator, got 7. Their partners, the ones who had their money stolen, testified against them, the bankers, in a desperate attempt to save their own careers, testified against them. They were totally, completely, and publicly isolated. My mother, Margaret, was left with nothing. The Medina mansion was seized by the banks to cover a fraction of the debt. Her friends, the ones from the charity boards, abandoned her instantly. She was a social pariah, the wife of a convicted felon. The last I heard, she was living with her sister in a small condo in Arizona, a world away from the life she had valued more than her own daughter. And me, My flawed inheritance maneuver had worked perfectly. By hollowing out the original company, I had legally protected Nexus Corp Delaware. The banks that had given my father the $30 million had no claim on my real company. They had given unsecured loans to a man based on fraudulent documents. It was their loss. 6 months after the party, Nexus Corp Technologies, my company, went public. The IPO was one of the largest of the decade. I didn't watch it from a trading floor. I watched it from my loft, my squalid apartment, on my laptop, with a cup of coffee. The artist daughter, the family failure, was now, officially, one of the wealthiest self-made women in the country. My life didn't change much on the outside. I still drive my Subaru, but on the inside, everything changed. I used the money to create the E.V. Foundation. It's not a showy, high society charity ball. It's a quiet, ruthless fund. We provide pro bono forensic auditors and top-tier legal counsel to victims of family financial fraud, specifically for people, often women, often the black sheep who have been exploited by those who were supposed to protect them. We are, as Mr. Chen likes to say, in the business of arming the underestimated Steven. I learned the most profound lesson that night. My family's greatest mistake was their arrogance. The weakness they saw in me, my art, my quiet nature. My refusal to play their corporate games was my greatest strength. It was my camouflage. They were so busy looking down on me that they never, not for 1 second, I thought to look at me. They never saw the woman who was smarter, tougher, and 3 steps ahead. They never saw the woman my father's actions had forced me to become. Have you ever been underestimated by the people who were supposed to love you most? Have you ever had your weakness turn out to be your greatest weapon? I would love to hear your stories in the comments below. Thank you for being here with me. If this story resonated with you, please remember to like and subscribe for more stories about finding your strength in the most unexpected places. And never, ever let anyone's definition of you become your prison. The people who underestimate you are just handing you the keys.